Welcome to Take Off Your Shoes. My name is Reverend Marie Duquette. I'm an ordained minister in the Lutheran tradition, and I believe that where my story, your story, and God's story meet, there is holy ground. The Holy Gospel according to John, the 12th chapter. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The Gospel of the Lord. On March 7th, 2020, we had my mother's funeral at the church in Ann Arbor where I was serving at the time. We had it there because there were murmurings about a virus that was making its way across our nation and that it wasn't safe to travel across state lines. She lived in Florida with her husband, who had already had her body cremated and who couldn't travel himself because he had just broken his femur. So the congregation I was serving allowed me and my brothers to have her funeral there with a few of the gifts she had given us laid on an altar in place of her body. Today's gospel was the gospel for her funeral. Little did I realize that the next day, Sunday, would be our last Sunday worshiping together in the sanctuary, in the church at all, because COVID descended and suggested we all take an unexpected break for just a couple of weeks while the medical experts in this country took stock of what was happening and helped us find a way forward. Andrea Gibson, a queer poet who has both Lyme disease and terminal cancer, wrote a poem that captures well exactly when and how we began to distance and become more distant from one another. Listen. There was never not a bridge from your chest to mine. My heartbeat was always the sound of your feet walking toward me. I can't believe how many years I lived without knowing the air you were breathing out was the air I was breathing in. Forgive me for not saying thank you before our lungs had reason to hide. Do you pray more than you used to? I pray all the time. I pray to the big bang and to the tiny bang and to the bangs we'll all have to cut ourselves so we can see what beauty can only be seen from 6 feet away. A giraffe's neck is 6 feet long. A decade from now, will I remember the week I spent wondering if I could hug a giraffe's torso and not get sick if the giraffe coughed? I don't want to forget anything about this, especially not how it feels to worry about everyone I love at the same time. So much of the world had been doing that already. If every heart-worthy novelist weeps for days before killing off a beloved character, God must have spent centuries sobbing before pressing a pen to the page of this year. In today's gospel, Judas takes issue with the closeness of Mary to Jesus, the carelessness of her actions, her brazenness in letting down her hair, the way she chose to use her money, the extravagance, the wastefulness. If Mary had been the one telling the story, we might better understand what happened that day. She might have told us how. Her brother had died. Lazarus had been dead 4 days, and she and her sister Martha were in shock, so grief-stricken that they wanted Jesus to come and be with him, but he delayed. So right or wrong, they blamed Jesus for Lazarus' death, as if, had Jesus hurried, he might have healed their brother and they wouldn't have had to bury him. She might have explained that when Jesus showed up, he too was grieved so much that he did not allow a Lazarus to remain dead. It's true, she would have said. Jesus called Lazarus out of the tomb and he came out. She would help us imagine how he had stumbled as he walked, covered his eyes again when he saw the sun, coughed as his lungs filled again with air. Never before had our grief so quickly turned to joy, she might have said. Jesus gave us the most precious gift, giving our brother back to us and to the world. And that is why we were celebrating, gathering around the table and carping diem, delighting in life. Can you imagine their surprise when Jesus raised Lazarus from the grave and it stirred things up, and not in a good way? The religious leaders found out about Lazarus coming back from the dead, and she would tell you they were so angry, so threatened, so afraid, though they didn't actually say that. What they said through their actions, though, told us what they thought of our Jesus, our Savior. The authorities started to plot Jesus' death, and they started to plot Lazarus' death so that there would be no evidence of the miracle and Jesus' power. Can't leave a witness now, can we? Maybe Mary would tell us that she was afraid too. Martha was busy in the kitchen, but Mary wanted to be at the feet of Jesus, to sit, to listen, to carve his words upon her heart, to hear him pour out his vision for us all. His words gave her soul such rest, such peace. He helped her imagine a world that could be more just, more safe, more healthy. Then, of course, Martha scolded Mary for her not helping in the kitchen, so Mary returned to the kitchen. But her fear of losing someone else she loved was nudging her to do something tangible, something meaningful, to mark this moment, to hallow the time, just in case there wouldn't be many more times that they got to be together again. She hurried to the kitchen as she remembered the jar of perfume they had, perfume to anoint Lazarus' body when it was lifeless. Maybe she was thinking about how kings were anointed, and she wanted to honor Jesus in that same way as a king. She took the jar, left the kitchen, entered the room where the men were sitting on pillows around the table. She let down her hair, at which point some of the men turned away as if this was some vulgar thing, a single woman with loose hair approaching a single man and daring to touch him. But their disapproval didn't stop her. She bent down at Jesus' feet and started to pour out the perfume made of pure nard onto his feet. She used her hair to spread the perfume to the tips of his toes, to the rough soles of his feet to the back of his heel and around his ankle. The sweet fragrance filled the room along with her love for Jesus and her gratitude for what he had done. No doubt she cried, and her tears started to mix with the oils of the perfume. She leaned down further to rest her head on the tops of his feet. And it was then, she would say, that Judas spoke up from the corner, barking his critique like venom. Why waste such costly perfume when someone hungry could be fed? The words stung. She only had meant to express her abiding love. Mary might have told us, I didn't trust Judas either. I know there was talk among Jesus' closest friends that maybe Judas couldn't be trusted with the common purse. Before I could find words to say, Jesus spoke up. He told Judas to leave me alone. Jesus told a man to leave me alone. And it was a turning point for what was to come. 5 years ago, COVID conditioned us to leave one another alone, to keep to ourselves, not to hug, not to touch. It was a turning point leading to where we are now, still a bit afraid, still preparing to mask up and stay home and pull back, still anxious and nervous about fully investing ourselves in one another, in new relationships, lest we add to the list of people we will grieve when they inevitably die. We began this week hearing Cory Booker tell stories about people who were hurting and suffering. He did something extravagant. He talked for 25 hours without so much as a bathroom break. He did it to impress upon those who listened how his faith compelled him to do what he could with what he had. Also, he called us to get involved, to stop the pain that others were experiencing. And yesterday, millions of people risked being together, reconnecting around the issue of life, telling those who would try to take it from the disabled, the children, the immigrants, women, teachers, scientists, doctors, artists, our elders, to leave them alone. We each have stories to tell. When we are able to tell our stories, and when we each are willing to stop what we are doing and listen, we connect at a deeper level. A level that enables us to risk danger and to risk criticism, to love one another. When we hear one another's stories, it is easier to understand the things we do that may cause others to gasp or question or criticize. When we hear one another's stories, we learn what we each have lost. And we are compelled to try to bring what has died back to life. Thank you for listening to Take Off Your Shoes. Let me send you out now with this blessing. May God give you the grace never to sell yourself short, grace to risk something big for something good, and grace to remember the world is now too dangerous for anything but the truth and too small for anything but love.
If you're still listening, she held your attention. Give her a thumbs up and subscribe. Watch the video on her YouTube channel. Search on YouTube for Take Off Your Shoes with Marie Duquette, Duquette.